Hello, today is September the 9th, 2020, and if you're here for how Burger King delivers a unified, personalized, localized content experience with our guest presenters Roland Gonzalez and Tara Stevenson, you are in the right place. Welcome to the show. My name is Scott Abel, and I'll be your host and navigator for today's show. And a few things you can know about today's webinar. First thing you should know is that we do not have access to your camera or microphone, so we cannot hear or see you. So you don't have to worry about those things at all during the show. Also, you can't have a two-way communication with us, but I'll tell you a little bit more about what you can do during the show. First, you can ask us a question using the Ask a Questions tab located in your webinar viewing panel. This text-based chat allows you to send a text-based chat message to us in the form of a question, for example, for one of the presenters, but I cannot respond back to you in that text format. But I'll know that you've asked a question, and I'll ask as many as possible of the presenters with the time remaining at the end of the show. Also, you can search for help in the attachments and links section of the webinar viewing panel. There's some troubleshooting information and some access information for the Bright Talk Troubleshooting Help Support Desk. And you can access additional content provided by today's presenters, including a copy of today's slides in the attachments and links section, as well as promotional materials made available by the presenters. And finally, you can also give feedback at the end of the show, and I'll remind you to do that on the way out the door, giving us a 1 through 5 star rating. 5 is a high star, 1 is a low star, and we're asking you to give us a rating on the quality of the information provided by the guest presenters today. Okay, and speaking of guest presenters, on the line with me, I have guest number 1, Megan Gilhooly. Megan, are you on the line?
I'm here, Scott. How are you doing?
Excellent, and you sound wonderful today. Where are you broadcasting from?
I'm in the snowy Denver. 94 degrees 2 days ago, snow on the ground today.
Yep, okay. That just says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I imagine you're working from home, but that answer used to be a fun answer. I don't think that's the case anymore. Do you want to welcome our co-presenters today?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm very happy to introduce to you a couple of our customers, Roland Gonzalez, who is Head of Global Operations Standards for Burger King, Popeyes, and Tim Hortons. He's responsible for implementing tools, technology, and resources to drive the guest satisfaction and food safety compliance in over 100 countries across the globe. So welcome, Roland.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here joining you from sunny Miami.
Very nice. So if I saw this correctly, you started your career at Burger King, or at least your leadership career, in the BK MBA leadership program. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, at the back in 2011.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, thank you for joining us today. Also on the line, we have Tara Stevenson, who is the global lead for restaurant compliance for RBI, and she managed the project of bringing the franchisee user manuals up to date. That's the project you're going to be hearing about today. I also noticed, Tara, that you founded and ran your own snow cones business, which I thought was really cool, and that you're a co-founder of a nonprofit organization called Jog for Good. Very cool stuff. Thanks for joining us, Tara.
Thanks, Megan. It's great to be here. I appreciate the introduction. And yes, when I was very young, I started my own snow cone business. I say very young. I was in my 20s, and I was like, I want to work for myself. So that's what I did.
Nice.
So thank you for having me today.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks for joining us. Very good. All right. So with that, we can go ahead and kick it off. So Roland, I'm going to hand it over to you. Let's get started.
Thank you so much, Megan, and good afternoon here from Miami. Good morning to those on the West Coast. It's a pleasure to be with you. Really excited to share how we at Restaurant Brands International, or RBI for short, in fact, unify, personalize, and localize the content for one of our most important programs. And as previously mentioned, I'm Roland Gonzalez, Head of Global Operations Standards. Joining me is Tara. She wears many hats for us, but is certainly a subject matter expert on what we'll be sharing today. So before we jump in, I want to take a moment and briefly introduce you to Restaurant Brands International for those that may not be as familiar. RBI is the parent company of three iconic brands, quick service brands, Burger King, Popeyes, and Tim Hortons. We have locations in many countries all over the globe and are continuing to grow within those countries and also expanding to others. We're very passionate about the many thousands of our guests who visit our restaurants each and every day to enjoy a Whopper, fried chicken, coffee, or many of the other craveable products on our menus. And one of the key tools that help us achieve our operational results, ultimately our consistency, is our operation manuals. And for the purposes of the presentation today, we'll focus specifically on Burger King. So what is an operations manual? The most common term that I hear when I'm in the field with our restaurant teams is that it's the Bible of the restaurant. In other words, if there were ever a single source of truth for everything, the operations manual is it. Our franchise partners and restaurant teams count on this important document to reference, to clear doubts. It's where training material stems from, and much more. For example, if you've ever wondered how to make a Whopper, this is exactly where you will find it. A couple of years ago, we found ourselves in a difficult position trying to manage change, to update the content in a timely manner, and ultimately make it easy for our restaurant teams to find the information that they needed, but also doing so in an engaging way. And so this started our journey to revamp and improve our content and processes. The first thing we needed to do was reorganize the content that we had. So if we learned that no matter how good a solution is out there, or whatever process you can come up with, if your content is not organized properly, it's not going to work in an optimal format. And so that said, we organized the content kind of in the following manner. So you see, we organized first in what we considered brand agnostic content. So as I mentioned, we have these three iconic brands, and there are consistencies that we want to make sure that content reflects in the operations manual. So things like our guest feedback platform that is across all three brands, food safety, our high food safety standards that we want to make sure are across all of our brands. These things will very rarely change over time and should be consistent across three brands. So that is how we identified and ultimately tagged those. Then, of course, there's each brand is different in their own way and should be treated as such. And so, for example, for Burger King, you have all of these countries across the world, but part of our job is to standardize. So there are global specific brand content, such as cleaning systems, equipment, how we serve our guests, that should have consistency no matter where you are, and that have consistent standards. So that is how we created and tagged that content. But we also needed the flexibility and preciseness to have regional content, whether that's in one of our regions like Europe, Middle East and Africa, or Latin America and the Caribbean. These are the type of regional content that might be specific to that particular region. And then, of course, to one specific country, such as France rolling out a particular product that is unique to that country. So that's how we organized and ultimately dispersed our content to ensure that we were set up for success. So as previously mentioned, our legacy platform was outdated. Having content in PDF format made it very difficult to make changes or updates quickly, and not ideal for the front-end users to search. So ensuring that content was not repetitive was key because it makes it much easier for people to find what they're looking for. Again, this is one of the most important elements that we were seeking and ultimately searching for. So we didn't want someone to type in, if someone wanted to learn how to wash their hands or what's the proper procedures to wash your hands, which of course in this environment is all the more important, have had to do it for a very long time. We want to make sure that when they type in hand washing, they go to how you wash your hands and not 100 different procedures that require you to wash your hands before you go do it, and it just is telling you wash your hands, and they can't find exactly what they're looking for. So it goes without saying also, right, that we wanted our proprietary data to be secure, and that the right people are seeing what they're supposed to see based on, for example, the regions that I just described. And we also needed a way to easily add, remove users into the system with all of our team members, and also be able to internally collaborate with cross-functional teams and track how the data is being used.
Wow, so that's a really big project. It sounds like you were managing PDFs, which is really, really difficult, and you had a lot of repetitive content. So you obviously needed a new way to manage your content. And of course, security is vital. You don't want anyone stealing your Whopper recipes, right? So where did you start? What specific requirements did you address first, second, and third?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, look, after gathering feedback from all the different stakeholders, we created those requirements aligned with our goals. And so here's some of them. One is a single location for data, reinforcing the point of having the single source of truth that we were talking about. Also, we wanted a self-service tool, personalized team member experience. So our approach was to have a document that was simple and easy to read. Our inspiration actually at North Star was the one of the very first Burger King ops manuals from the 1950s, where it was really easy, very simple to understand and find what you were looking for that really broke through the clutter. So ultimately, we knew we wanted and we could create a digital version like that. And if we did, we would be in great shape. And we also wanted the ability to manage content seamlessly. So at our scale, right, if we were to change a global standard, one of those that I was talking about earlier. So, for example, speed of service. If now we want our speed of service to be 15 seconds faster than it currently is, in the legacy platform, we'd have to go to each individual country for their ops manual and update that particular line to be 15 seconds faster. And that's just simply not feasible to manually update that operations manual. And so we needed something that gave us the flexibility to be able to do that on a global, brand agnostic, and also regional scale at the click of a button.
So, Roland, clearly you were doing a lot of things manually. You were trying to get information to more than 100,000 users in over 100 countries. How did you manage to get the right information to the right locations and in the right language for your users?
Yeah, it's a good question. Being a global company with 100+ countries, it's critical that the content be localized to the relevant languages, as you mentioned. So through the use of CCMS, Component Content Management System, we're able to quickly have content translated in every language needed by our users in a timely manner, and Tara will elaborate more on this. And the dynamic system allows selected users ultimately to review translated content and provide feedback for further accuracy and collaboration quickly and effectively. That was a definitely big plus, the fact that it's all integrated. And so with that, I'm going to actually pass it to Tara, who will provide some more color into how we got all this done. Tara?
Yeah, thanks, Roland. So given all of these needs, we're presented with a solution that combined the services of multiple platforms. Our back end, which is handled by Vasant, translations, and then the front end, which is handled by Zoomin, and of course, analytics. So when it comes to putting together all of the information that makes up our operations manual, Vasant is used to build the content. This allowed us to convert our ops manuals from PDF to HTML, and the transition was quick and seamless to learn. The difference between the two was noticed right away. With PDF, it was difficult to make changes easily, and not everyone was able to edit the forms with the tools available to them. The HTML format provides us with a way to easily create and edit the large amount of information that we have. We use Vasant's platform to build content for over 100 countries and accommodate all of their needs, such as temperature variances, multiple languages, and different menu items. We also use this platform to communicate with franchisees that request changes to their manual. And we refer to this as the feedback loop. It's very important to us because through this tool, users can create a request that is delivered directly to us. We're able to see exactly where in the manual they need these changes and who the request came from. So through the feedback loop process, we can make changes, share with selected reviewers so they can check for accuracy and approve, and also let the requester know the status update of their change request. So this is one tool available in Vassant that allows us to create an ops manual that is useful and beneficial to everyone. And with help from Vassant and a few key experts, we were able to roll out a brand new ops manual to all restaurants in record time.
That's awesome. Hey, Tara, what kind of record are we talking about? What was the time before and the time after? Do you know?
Yeah, so rolling out the ops manual, we were able to average about 10 to 20 countries a month. And that's saying a lot considering the translations that needed to be done. So it took a lot of time, took a lot of effort, on both ends, but we're very fortunate to get all of this done.
Very nice. And you were using DITA already, or you weren't using DITA yet?
No, we weren't using DITA yet.
You moved into DITA, right? Okay.
Yes.
Very nice. Carry on.
Yeah, thank you. After creating the HTML version of the manual in English, we needed to translate it into many different languages, as we said before, that our ops manuals are currently available in. As you can imagine, being in over 100 countries means that translating would be no easy feat. Global Link was able to provide the solution and translate our ops manual seamlessly. Even languages that use special characters instead of letters, such as Chinese and Arabic, which is read left to right, were able to be accommodated and translated. The translation process is a cross-collaboration effort that includes multiple teams. This is done on the Global Link Project Director platform, which is a very important platform that we use today, and it allows selected users, we call them reviewers, to review the translated documents for accuracy and provide in-platform feedback. And this is what Roland touched on a little bit earlier. Adjustments are made using the feedback, and sometimes this may require multiple rounds of feedback, but we're able to see where the content is in the review process by viewing the progress bar. Translations.com also captures words and tones that are used in past translations and the review and the feedback review process, and they're able to implement it in future translation projects for it. This allows for faster turnaround times in the future projects. Once the translation is complete, the ops manual is ready to be published. So here we have our back-end process from Vassant, where we actually built the manual, HTML, and then it goes through the translation process. So at the end of the translation process, the final product is delivered and is published across Zoomin on two separate sites. First, we publish on our staging site, and this allows us to see the ops manual in true format without being available for viewing to all users. This is needed because we want to ensure that the content is, one, accurate, and two, it shows up correctly and in the right place. We use our reviewers again in this process to also review content on the staging site. If any changes need to be made, we return to the Vassant platform to make those changes. And then once we verify that all content is correct, we publish to our production site where all users can see the ops manual.
Very nice. Tara, once the content is verified by your reviewers, how long does it typically take you to publish to the production site?
It takes literally seconds. I'll publish it and I'll get a notification in my inbox within about 30 seconds saying that it's been published. So it's pretty quick.
Awesome. And how do your users consume the content? What's the experience like for them?
Yeah, it's a great question. The manuals need to be available through different platforms offered by our brands. And Zoomin can integrate with many different platforms, so users have access without the need to type in another URL. So we have our internal platform, DK Link, and they can get through that. And there's also a single sign-on that they can access our ops manuals as well. And as you can see, users can easily navigate through the site, and a search function is available for even faster discovery. As you can see on this screen here, many of our restaurants find the search bar to be valuable and also find that it makes it easier and faster to navigate through the ops manuals. I believe Roland touched on this a little bit earlier as well. What they type in is important. Our ops manual is broken down by chapters to create a better user experience, and it also allows our restaurants to quickly find what they're looking for. So if they're looking for something like guest service, they're able to find it quickly without having to go through the entire food safety part of the manual to look for it and find it.
That's awesome. That must save them just tons of time. Really incredible.
Yes, absolutely. It saves me a ton of time too, because I'm always looking through our ops manuals for all of our brands, try to find things.
Nice. There you go.
Oh, so I'm going to pass it back to Roland.
Yeah, thank you, Tara. So, look, bringing it all together, all these solutions ultimately allowed us to have the robust and customizable experience we were looking for both the back end and front end. And as you see here, the benefits ultimately align with the goals that we set out from the beginning. The end product is a much more user-friendly experience. It's much more simple to navigate. You can see here what the before and after. Also, it was really important that when you went when the user of a particular brand went to the ops manual, that they knew that they weren't going to a generic operations manual. They were going to the Burger King or Tim Hortons or Popeye's operations manual. And so the look and feel and the individual branding was extremely important for us. And so small things like the banner and colors, those things were important for us. We were also very careful in what images were used and where they were used. Because it's very, very easy for images in particular to become outdated or not relevant, whether it's a piece of equipment that's different in a different part of the world, or a different build to a product, or something may change in a procedure that you're showing as a photo. It's really important that we limited that, and we're really strategic in where we use the images. And so, as you see here, the result is a much more streamlined, sleeker, and really easy to access the information. That said, we're constantly looking at better ways to improve the platform and are moving into a next phase toward the tail end of this year and into 2021 of further enhancing aesthetics, always looking to make it more engaging for our team members and managers. And so,
Roland, I love that you brought images into this, because with you going out to 100 different countries, obviously we know that different cultures perceive even colors differently, right? So super important that you have something that has probably a lot of white space and uses color and images just really intelligently. So it looks really nice.
Great point, Megan. Thank you. And so just wanted to bring in the perspective of analytics. Analytics behind our hard work is important to us as a company. We work very hard to ensure that we're moving in the right direction based on the factual data. And we also know that you cannot improve what you don't measure. And so using analytics, we're able to understand who is using our operations manual, how they're engaging with it, what are the most searched items, bringing those to the top to make our team members' lives easier. So through the platform, we can discern if changes need to be made to make our content delivery more engaging. And certain users can also request that changes be made directly through the Ops Manual platform. So, if a local law in a particular country changes, as things have been changing very quickly with our laws these days internationally, they can request it. It can go straight to us, and we can go through the process and properly reflect how that may impact the operations manual. And so finally, this type of information is really important to us as we rolled out, as Tara mentioned, 10 countries a month or whatever it was. It was really important that it was in fact rolled out in a quality manner and that people are using it and engaging with it, and we can have the comfort of knowing that it was activated properly. So if we didn't see the right user engagement numbers, it likely meant that it's less that people were just not using it and more that it was a technical problem that we needed to fix and make sure that we fix on the back end. So that's another reason and way that data helped us achieve our goals. And so with that, in closing, it was an absolute pleasure joining you today. Thank you for listening, and hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Roland. We'll get Scott back on. It looks like we might have some questions from the audience.
We do. In fact, the first question is coming from me because I'm looking for clarity here, and I know that somebody in the audience was curious about the authoring environment in which the content was created. My experience with Vassant as a product was from its component content management roots. Is there a XML editor that was made available from Vassant that you've been employing to create the content, or are you bringing it in from multiple editing tools?
Actually, so this is Tara. The answer to that is both. We're also provided with an expert, Vassant expert, Sue, and she helps us with creating a lot of the content as well.
Oh, great. Thank you for sharing that. Do you use the same single source feed from your LMS? Do you do that from the learning management side of things?
Yes, for the one access. So there's 3 points of access that can get users to the ops manuals, and yes, the LMS or LMS platform is one of them. Was that the question?
And do you feed the content in from the same source so that basically you have one truth center and then it's just deployed through different learning management or content management systems?
Yes, so all of it feeds from Zoomin. So there's nothing that feeds from our LMS to there. To our
okay, great. Okay, and within your organization, which roles do you feel are most vocal about feeling the pain and were actively looking for a drive to change the way you were communicating with your franchise locations? Who in the company was, I guess, feeling the most pain and expressing the most discomfort?
Well, I guess it depends on what part of it. Oh, Roland, did you want to answer this?
No, go for it. Go for it.
I was going to say, I think it depends on what part of the manual and what you're looking for. Restaurant managers, of course, when they have a lot of time constraints, so they have a lot of responsibility. So sitting down and looking through the ops manual for an hour for information was not ideal for them. So that's where the search feature really comes in handy. And then from the side of making changes to the ops manuals or any updates from the franchisees, when it takes a long time to make an update or do a simple translation, then it can become frustrating to our franchisees.
Excellent. What type of person is usually accesses the ops manual? Is it only the managers, or do you have individual employers like cashiers or line cooks that also access that information?
Yes. So anybody, team members in our restaurants have access to our learning management system, and therefore they have access to the ops manuals, but also our franchisees, master franchisees, and internal users from RBI as well, legal department.
Do you mark up the content to allow you to serve up the right or the best content, I guess, for each one of those different roles?
Yes. So through Zoomin, it's really easy to add users and also be able to determine what the users have access to and what they see. So depending on the role, that will determine what they see in the ops manuals. For example, a team member doesn't need to see management information and things like that. So it makes it very easy to do that through Zoom In.
That's very good. And in case I missed it, and I may have, I stepped away for just a second to address my cat who wanted to be a guest star on today's show. How big is corporate content team? So how many people are involved in putting this information together for the solution that you've described here today?
It's hard to put a number on that. I think it's a true collaborative. This could only be done in conjunction with our field teams all over the world. So we have teams in Asia and Europe, in North America, and so in order to ensure that the content is correct and accurate, it involves several reviews along the way, not only from an operations team, but also from our quality assurance teams as well, or perhaps legal teams, depending on the item. So it's not necessarily just one team that this affects. There's multiple stakeholders, and that's why the key for us was to find a tool that was able to centralize it all, so that we can still have a proper process, but not bureaucratic enough that slowed us down. So it's a multiple stakeholder type team.
Roland, as part of this journey, there is often a discussion amongst management of what they call the unintentional discoveries or the accidental improvements. So one of our viewers wants to know, during your journey, did your teams have to learn different ways or new ways of creating content? For example, did they have to make it more conversational or mobile-centric? Did the journey also lead to more videos or maybe less written content? In other words, did you discover some other things along the way about your content just by taking a critical look at it? And if so, did they impact the improvements that you made?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think some of the things we found, going back to the images item, that was very important for us to once we started looking and auditing what we had, in the current state, we saw a lot of the pictures were outdated, so that kind of helped us. Also, bring up a good point about being mobile friendly. As more and more restaurants are moving away from and have already moved away from desktops in the back of the office to tablets and mobile devices, it was extremely important that the content be able to be viewed and engaged with in that format. So that certainly was something that we took into high consideration for sure.
You certainly, with the food service, with the food service industry, you certainly have the current events that are forming every decision we make in the future about business, affecting how you look at point of delivery. And it seems to me that one of our viewers asked, where is the personalization occurring? And so I guess my tweak to that question is your personalization occurring at the point of delivery, or are you personalizing it upstream somewhere? Or does the Zoom In serve the purpose of kind of making sure the right content gets served up to the right person in the right situation?
Yeah, I think
I can answer that if you want.
Yeah,
sure.
Happy
Go ahead.
Go for it. I wanted to just provide a little bit of it's a combination, and from our perspective of ensuring that the alignment of the users is in the right format, right? So that's why the tagging of the content is so critical. Which content is for what region, and so that we can change it in that format. So there's a lot of back-end work that's done there, so that the front-end user experience is that person is seeing what they need to. Megan, please expand on that.
Sure. So the tagging is done inside the data content, which is stored and managed in Vassant. And then those tags are carried into Zoom In when we index. And Zoom In indexes it and notices, based on the tagging, who should get which particular piece of content, let's say, then when somebody logs in using the authentication method, Zoomin can recognize them as a line cook or whatever they are, and then Zoomin serves up the right content to that person using it.
And that's all based on the metadata that the authors apply
Yes.
to the content? Okay, great. And what metrics, for our Burger King compatriots, what metrics do you find the most useful? And since there are two of you, do each of you find the same metrics the most useful, or do you see them differently because of your roles?
Tara, you want to take that one first?
Yeah. So I think the metrics that I find the most useful is where and who's using the operations manual, where in the world they're using the operations manual, and then how often they're using it. The teams that are using it the most often usually have the most feedback and the most requests. So it's important for us to see those, especially when we're talking to those teams and we're working with those teams and collaborating.
Yeah, I think number of users when you look at a franchisee, especially when we look at larger franchisees, being able to see the ratio per restaurant that team members are logging in or managers are utilizing, or also what are the most searched items. These things are very helpful to help us. So I would say those are the key metrics.
Thank you for that.
One other thing that you guys have access to, sorry Scott, one of the things that you have access to that you might not even know about yet because it's brand new in the content dashboard is a freshness and popularity matrix, which enables you to see what content is not being viewed very often and is not very fresh, what content is being viewed a lot but is not very fresh or current, what content is very fresh or current but isn't being viewed, and then, of course, the ultimate, which is content that is very fresh and is very popular. So that's another metric that I'm hopeful you guys will dive into soon. I think you'll find it really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that.
Does the Burger King team use a taxonomist to help with tagging? And I think the question could be extended to say somebody dedicated to the role of taxonomy, either internally or externally, to help you get it right. Did you do that?
Yeah, so that's where, sorry, go ahead, Roland.
No, I was just going to say we had to learn all about taxonomy when we took on this project and became much more knowledgeable about how that worked, but do not have any specialists or anything like that. I think that's what Tara was going to mention, is that we relied more on the partnership with the platform experts to help us set up the taxonomy and guide us through the process.
Content is often seen as a magic easy button in some respects, and sometimes it is, right? It answers a question very quickly. We need the answer. We ask it. There's the question. There's the answer. Happy, and everybody moves on. But then sometimes we rely on our memory, and we remember certain instructions that somebody provided us, and maybe those instructions change often. This viewer wants to know, do you have any techniques to help make sure that the content is consumed by the person using it, and that they don't just rely on their memory, for example, on a certain piece of content that might change really often, and the person just feels confident that they know what it says, so they don't bother to look it up. Do you have any special situations where you have to provide content and make sure that they are reading the most fresh version?
So I want to look. I think for our operations manual in this particular use case, they're not changing in such a frequent way where there's certain sections that one day you'll be looking at and reading a certain content will change. So it's a little bit more static, although there are of course changes that happen, but not frequent. What I would say is the ops manual is also, although, as I mentioned earlier, training material is leveraged from the operations manual that centralizes all location. It's not it's not necessarily a tool for to the one-stop shop for training as well. So normally, what changes over time are products, a new product launch, or a procedure that may be changing in order to improve. Those type of materials are developed and executed and deployed by our training team, and they basically optimize the content for those such changes versus the operations manual.
Perfectly makes sense. Thank you for that clarity. How about telling us a little bit about the effort that is involved in moving from unstructured, PDF to this kind of newer format that's structured and relies on taxonomy and metadata to help drive it? What effort was involved in helping your team kind of move from the old way of doing things and creating content to the new way?
Sure.
Yeah, I'll take this one, Roland.
Go for it, Tara.
It was, as Roland mentioned earlier, definitely a highly collaborative effort. We used a lot of different forms to be able to pull this information from PDF to HTML, and also with the help from the team at Vassant to get the information onto Vassant's website and be able to put all the mapping in and all of that stuff. So it was a huge collaborative effort. And we had a couple people on our team that worked on a lot of the mapping that went into this.
Excellent. Here is another question. I'll give you a different flavor of question. We've got several different people asking questions. I can tell some of them are on a similar path. What metrics did you decide to track and why? Was there some kind of process that you decided, or did you see something worthy of potentially counting it and start counting it to see what you could learn? I spoke about this metric earlier, but when we see that a certain country is not using the ops manual, if they're using it very little or not at all, that could mean many different things. But one of these metrics, when we noticed that South Korea, for example, wasn't really using their ops manual, reached out to them, and then we got a ton of feedback back about some things that they weren't able to see. So we were able to make adjustments to their ops manuals, and the reason they weren't using it is because it wasn't right. So that was important for us to be able to get that feedback from them. And then not sure if we hadn't reached out, if we would have gotten that feedback from them and that it wasn't right and that we needed to make those adjustments. Excellent. Collecting metrics is great, especially if you want to show improvement. Do you have any statistics that show or demonstrate your improvement for, let's say, field support teams? In other words, has your self-service helped their productivity in some way or another?
I think there's so many variables in the restaurant and in each individual market that it's hard to tie, the content of the operations manual to business performance per se. I think for us, it was more about, we had surveys that we had initiated throughout the different regions of the world, comparing their, getting feedback directly from the restaurant managers and team members of what they liked, and if they liked the platform better. And above and beyond every metric that we asked, whether they were using it more, what was it more accurate, was it more engaging, all of those elements were far and above an improvement from the platform that we had before. And I would also say that for our internal processes, right, it saved us a whole bunch of time. So as far as value provided or value created, just being more efficient as an organization internally has provided a huge value in that respect as well.
That makes perfect sense. When you receive, when updates are made to your content, granted it is a different type of content, as you pointed out, and it's not necessarily the be-all, end-all knowledge center for everything about Burger King operations, but it becomes the kind of Bible, if you will, or the go-to source of relevant information. Do you have the ability to notify people who use that publication that something important is getting ready to happen to that content, or do you use a different delivery method to point out that those updates might be coming? In other words, could you trigger an email or a text message or something, letting the right relevant roles be aware of the changes that might be coming in the future so that they could be ready to consume the new content?
It's a good question. Depending on what exactly is changing in the operations manual, the advisement of that change could come in very different ways. It could come through, the version control that we have of the operations manual, where it's very easy to track and understand when there was the last version updated and what was changed. But also, if it's something material, a standard change, that would also be, done and translated or transmitted to the franchise community and restaurant teams through, webcasts or other training material that I referenced earlier. I don't know, Tara, if you wanted to add anything else. But.
That's exactly it. We also, leverage our LMS platform to communicate those, to communicate any updates that are going to be made. Say if it's a standard change or something like that, then that platform was used to communicate that, not really through our operations manual.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, with coronavirus happening, I think our go-to methods of communication often are co-opted by the situation at hand. So I can see why you have to be creative sometimes and step outside of your predefined process, because after all, who planned for the pandemic, right? That was not on my business plan. There was a viewer who was really curious about translation management and wanted to ask a question about it, but I'll warn you that it's 3 questions, so I'm going to try to bring it together into an easy to answer frame. So how long does it typically take to translate a piece of this content after it is completed?
That's a good question. It depends on what it is and how much in translation. So if say we're in a brand new country with a brand new language, for the entire manual, it can take about now there's different steps of the process. There's translating the material, which could take about 2 to 3 weeks. And then there's the review process, where the reviewer goes in and literally reviews all of the material that has been translated, and then provide their feedback. So that's based on their time frame. We've had it take a week for some people, and we've had it take a couple months for others. But then after that's provided, then whatever feedback they have, if it's a lot of feedback, that can take about 2 to 3 weeks as well. If it's just a little bit of feedback, then that can take about 7 to 14 days.
And does the amount of feedback required really have something to do with the need of the content itself? For example, in the Olympics, an Olympic diver does dive, and the judges score the diver's dive on a difficulty factor that's very specific to that dive, right? So is the amount that goes into it specific to what you're trying to accomplish with that content? In other words, would maybe a smaller, less intrusive tweak that isn't likely to have many repercussions might not take as long as something that touches many other places in the company, for example?
Yeah, it does. Tone is a huge one, especially when you're in different regions. So one translation in one part of China might not necessarily be the same in another part of China. It really depends on the tone. So a lot of the reviewers are looking at that, and if the word that is translated doesn't match the tone in their region, then those words need to be changed. So that's more of the feedback that we get back.
And are all of your docs selected for translation the majority of the time, or is it a selection of docs for a very specific reason?
All of them end up going to translation. And it really depends on, one, the language, and it depends on what it is. When we make a change that just has to do with temperatures or numbers, provided we don't need a special character for it, then those documents don't go to translation. There's no need to translate that.
When you say go to translation, is there another group of people that handle the daily routines involved with translating the content, and you kind of pass your approved content over to them to take over for the next part, or how do you do that there?
Well, so we do that right through the Vassant platform. Once we create the content, so to speak, in the platform, then it's so easy. You just press translate, and it automatically gets into translations.com.
Excellent. And
we don't have a separate team on our team.
Right. One of our viewers says, wow, that's really great results for this new solution. Have you been able to add any additional language support or support for additional languages, either in the amount of content offered or in the additional number of languages that you're offering because of this efficiency?
Can you ask that question again?
Yeah, I think what they're after there is because you're becoming more efficient, have you been able to support more language? Have you been able to translate more words? Have you been able to add a new language because you found that you're more productive?
Yeah, so one of the cool things about
Are you still there?
We may have lost Tara there. I can take this one. I think where some of our efficiencies have improved when we talk about new languages or things like that is, for example, a new country entry, a country that we're entering into the first time, and that also happens to be a new language. We're able to prepare that country for success much faster. And the operations manual is usually the base of where a lot of things come from, as far as getting the team ready and ramped up to open that market successfully. So we're able to ramp up, that's one example, much faster, and also translate our existing languages in a more efficient way.
Excellent. A few quick questions, Roland, that I think you can tackle. And I'm going to rephrase them to make them easier for you. Choosing between the two, moving to new tools or rewriting all your content, where did you have to put the most effort?
Oof, that's a good question. I think you have to rewrite the content. We personally were in a position where we had to rewrite our content for it to make sense. And that did take quite a while because we wanted to make sure that, anything that was removed needed to go through all different stakeholders that was relevant to say, yes, in fact, this information is not removed. Same with the repetitiveness of it. We needed to go through that. So it's hard to say one took longer than the other or one is more important than the other. I would say if you have a legacy platform, a lot of it will depend on how old your system is and how old your platform or document is. Ours was legacy for many years using the same system, so we had to put an equal amount of effort into the rewriting of it, as much as transitioning to a new platform. So it was about the same for us. If you already have, relevant content and you just need to make it better and more efficient, then I would say the tool piece would be more where you'd spend more time.
Excellent. And because we have a few people on the call who are specifically apparently interested in translation, I'm going to try to marry a couple questions here together, and then we'll end the show. So you mentioned translation.com. Is that work with them happening automatically? or do you have contracted company with professional translators doing the work for you?
I wouldn't. Nothing's necessarily automatic. We still have to, initiate the translation. We have to verify where and when we need it, and all that. But the fact that Vassant integrates so well with the translations.com and ultimately is able to turn it around to the front end, and it's part of the same system, is I guess what you would say is provides a more automatic way of doing things versus having to manually go into a different platform or go to different individual translators. It also ensures consistency in the translation with the word banks and all that over time, and the different nomenclature that is unique to each brand.
So you're managing your terminology with that solution as well. Is that fair, or do you have a third place where that exists?
No, we manage it there as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Roland, and I appreciate you jumping in there at the last minute, especially when we have a little snafu. I know that our other guest did not want to be cut off there, so I'll thank you on Tara's behalf. So thanks for joining us, and thanks to the audience members for asking all those questions. You had a great list of questions. If there are any other questions that we did not get to answer, I'll queue them up and try to share them with the sponsors of today's program, who sometimes use them to create other webinars or to create new content like a white paper or an article that might answer some of your questions. So definitely don't forget to check the attachments and links section of the webinar viewing panel so that you can take a peek at what content they've made available for you today. There are some handouts and, as mentioned earlier, a copy of today's slides so that you could benefit from the content that Tara and Roland gave us at the beginning of the show. Roland, thanks for joining us today and for your professionalism and making time in your busy schedule. I really appreciate it.
Thank you all very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Tara, are you back? Can we hear you still? Can we? Are you there? All right, then on behalf of Tara Stevenson, I'll say thank you. I know she seemed to be having a good time and answered tons of questions. It's very knowledgeable. Thank you for doing that, Tara, and for explaining them in ways that the users of our program today would find valuable, and I know you did because I could see their feedback. And speaking of feedback, why don't you leave some feedback from the audience on your way out the door using the 1 through 5 star rating system to give us a rating on how the presenters did today. And the rating is on the quality of the content that they provided you today using our 1 through 5 star rating system, with 5 being a high rating. And Megan Gahuli, thank you for joining and bringing this all to fruition and bringing your clients together to talk today. I know that the audience members got a lot out of it. There was a lot of Q&A and some great information being shared. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, you bet, Scott. This was awesome. Roland, thank you very much. And I'll definitely send Tara a big thank you as well. I think this was really interesting.
Excellent. All right. Today's show is brought to you by Zoom In Software, a company that helps your customers find the answers they need while empowering customer support agents to deliver better support. The platform ingests all of your product content, delivering a unified source of answers whenever and wherever your customers are looking, whether that means they're in your documentation website, on your customer service portal, or maybe in your online community, or just inside the product itself. Zoom In can help you serve up the right information to the right person when they need it. You can learn more about their offerings on the web at zoominsoftware.com. There's also some content provided in the attachments and links section by Zoom In that you want to check out. And there's a great blog on the zoominsoftware.com website that's updated frequently, including some nice, great articles coming out weekly or so from Megan, our guest co-host today. You don't want to miss those. There's some good content there. Speaking of good content, we're going to be talking with Sarah O'Keefe of Scriptorium about the need for an enterprise content that is a content strategy. That's going to happen here September the 10th. We'll have a 30-minute chat with her on our Coffee and Content Talk show. And then we'll follow up on the 15th with Ray Walsh, who's going to deliver a presentation for us about the need to localize internal communications and about how some of the many things we do to augment and make content more valuable for our customers could be used internally to strengthen relationships and to help companies work more efficiently and effectively. You don't want to miss that show. And we've got about 700 people already signed up for this one with Kate Moran, who is a Nielsen Norman Group Senior User Experience Specialist. She's going to be covering the research that they have that helps us understand scientifically how people read online so we can make better decisions about the content that we create for them. My name is Scott Abel, the Content Wrangler. Thanks for joining us for today's show. I appreciate you joining us. Don't forget to give us a rating on the way out the door and download some content if you haven't done so already. I look forward to seeing you at another webinar in the future. Until then, be safe, stay healthy, and keep doing great work. You've been watching How Burger King Delivers a Unified, Personalized, and Localized Content Experience with Roland Gonzalez and Tara Stevenson. Thanks for joining us today. See you again soon. Stay well.